You learn in geometry this idea of special right triangles that have very specific ratios. And those two triangles are very helpful for us to understand trig values of all kinds of angles from 0 to 360 degrees, or as I'd like for you to think of it, from 0 to 2 pi radians. So in geometry, you learn two special right triangles. Now then, geometry taught them to you as the first one was a 30 degree, 60 degree, 90 degree right triangle. I'd like for you to think of it in terms of radians. So remember how we convert from degrees to radians. 30 degrees times pi over 180 radians is going to end up being pi over 6. 60 degrees comes out to be pi over 3. And 90 degrees comes out to be pi over 2. So that's what they are in terms of radians. The other right triangles that you learned in geometry was the idea of a 45 degree, 45 degree, 90 degree right triangle. And again, in terms of radians, that's going to be pi over 4, and pi over 2. So let's draw these right triangles and remember the relationship between them here. So if I look at my 30, 60, 90, which is now going to be your pi over 6, pi over 3, and pi over 2 right triangle, the ratio here was if I start with the side across from pi over 6, I can label it as 1. The hypotenuse of this right triangle was always twice as long as that, so I can label it as 2. And then the other leg, the one across from the pi over 3 angle, was the square root of 3. And you may recall in geometry, you were asked to recall your SOHCAHTOA, and they may have said, hey, what's the sine of 60 degrees? And you had to go find opposite over hypotenuse, and those were the ratios you were using. And we'll look at something very similar here when we start talking about the exact trig values of certain angles. But it's important that we remember these ratios. The ratio of the 45, 45, 90, or pi over 4, pi over 4, pi over 2 right triangle, is that because the two angles, these pi over 4 angles, were congruent to each other, so too were the legs across from them. So we could say that these angles, if they were both equal to 1, they are the same. And then what we got for this measure of the hypotenuse of the right triangle was the square root of 2. So it's going to be very important that we remember these right triangles because they're going to be the ones that we use to really build these ratios all the way from 0 to 2 pi, understanding the sine, cosine, and tangent of various angles as we make our way through, again, the range from 0 to 2 pi.